Горячий салям алейкум из солнечного Рияда всем подписчикам моего канала, а также тем, кто пока еще не подписался, но уже вплотную подошел к принятию этого судьбоносного решения. Этим сюжетом я начинаю цикл рассказов в рамках моего проекта «Саудовский дневник» о судьбах людей, которых провидение забросило в Саудовскую Аравию. Вы узнаете из первых уст, какие обстоятельства заставили этих людей переехать в эту страну, какие трудности они встретили на этом пути и получилось ли у них эти трудности преодолеть. Вы также узнаете, считают ли они свой саудовский опыт удачей или ошибкой в их жизни и советуют ли они кому-нибудь этот опыт повторить. Я долго размышлял о том, кого бы пригласить в качестве первого гостя в этот цикл интервью. И подумал, что это должна быть женщина. Не секрет, что жизнь и судьба женщины в Саудовской Аравии вызывают огромный интерес. Это связано как с бытующими стереотипами, так и с отсутствием какой-либо объективной, непредвзятой информации по этому поводу. Второй вопрос был, а какую женщину пригласить? Опять же не секрет, что интернет полон историй о наших соотечественницах, которые в поисках принца на белом коне готовы выйти и таки выходят за кого угодно. К сожалению, очень часто мечты оказываются совершенно не соответствующими реальности. Кстати, о наших женщинах здесь я тоже расскажу. Но сейчас я хотел бы начать этот цикл с истории, которая, по моему мнению, совершенно необычна. Я назвал ее «Любить по-американски». Это история простой американской девушки Сюзи, которая влюбилась в саудовского парня, кстати, совсем не принца, в буквальном смысле этого слова, вышла за него замуж и в конце концов переехала жить на его родину. Что же в этом необычного, спросите вы? Я отвечу коротко. Все. Впрочем, смотрите это интервью и судите сами. Сначала я планировал рассказ где-то на полчаса, но потом оказалось, что этого мало. Я подумал, что вырежу все лишнее, когда буду монтировать сюжет. Но в итоге оставил все как есть. Правда или нет, все то, о чем говорит Сюзи. Говорит ли она это искренне, судить вам. Я предоставляю только факты. Немного о самом видео. Поскольку Сюзи живет в Джедде, это примерно 1000 километров от Рияда, то интервью было по скайпу. К сожалению, связь в этот день была не очень, что, впрочем, довольно обычно для Саудовской Аравии. Поэтому картинка присутствует только с моей стороны. К счастью, Сюзи любезно предоставила фотографии из своего семейного альбома, так что вы увидите их в этом сюжете. Подписывайтесь на мой канал, распространяйте это видео, оставляйте свои комментарии, ставьте лайки и помните, это только начало захватывающих историй. Okay. So, first of all, Suzy, thank you very much that you gave that kind consent to tell subscribers and simply watchers of my channel about your life story, which is, as I mentioned in our private conversation, is quite unusual, I would say. And frankly speaking, I don't know other American women who would get married locals, Saudi men. So that's why you are the first bird, let's say, in this series of my episodes of my channel, which will be devoted, will tell people about female life stories in Saudi Arabia. Not only local females. I will hope that I will be able. I hope that I will be able to find such females who tell their stories, local females, but also about expat women who have been living in Saudi Arabia for some time, for quite a while. So, and you are kind of an opener of this series, so that's why I hope that our today talk will launch this successful series of spin-off of my channel. Okay, so let's get started if you don't mind. Okay.
It's a pleasure, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I prepared a couple of questions, as I mentioned. So first of all, please tell me a little bit about your background. So you are from the United States. Which state?
Okay. I am American. I was born in New York State, New York City. But when I was about 5 years old, before I started kindergarten, we moved to Arizona, to a very small town on the Mexican border. In fact, it's so close to Mexico. Our house was on 8th Street, and we were 8 blocks from Mexico. That's how close we were to another culture, another country. So I grew up there in a small border town in Arizona, and then went to university in Tucson, which is about 120 miles away from my hometown. And that is where I met my husband, who is from Saudi Arabia. And we were married for 30 years before we moved to Saudi Arabia, to Jeddah, which was in 2007. So I've been living here in Saudi Arabia for 11 years now.
Okay. Oh, actually, you kind of answered some questions I planned to ask you about. So you were pretty fast. Okay. Okay. So, but anyway, the story of your marriage is a kind of, I would say, quite special story, because you, as you mentioned, you lived in a small town somewhere in the middle of nowhere, as it said. Okay.
Yes.
And by the way, I actually lived in the United States for a couple of years, so I kind of have some idea about what a small American town is actually. Okay, so you were just ordinary American girl who attended ordinary American high school, sang in the school God Save America, right? And then how did you meet your husband?
Okay. Well, I had actually gone to college, and I had become a police officer, and I ended up not really liking the shift work very well, because I would have to work like midnight till 8 in the morning, or from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, and it was difficult. So I wanted to go back to school for a career change. So when I was 26, I went back to the University of Arizona to study journalism. And I got a part-time job in the games room in the basement of the university there, the student union, so that I could, you know, help pay for my expenses while I was there. And very shortly after I started working, my husband came in to play pool, you know, I worked in the big pool hall down in the student union, and I was immediately attracted to him. And he would come in quite frequently to play pool, but he was always with this gorgeous, beautiful, long blonde hair, petite woman. And I thought that she was his girlfriend, but apparently I found out later that she wasn't. But one evening when I was working, he came in, but he wasn't with this woman. So he was with a friend of his, another Arab, and it was not a busy evening at work, so I put them at the table right in front of the desk where I sat. And while he was playing pool, I wanted to think of a way of how I could finally get this man to notice me, because up to that point he had been with this other woman all the time, and he conducted himself in a very business-like manner with me, and he never really seemed to notice me. So while he was playing pool, I decided to draw on my talents. And I've always loved art, and I love to draw, so I drew a picture of him. And when he was finished playing pool and brought the pool balls to the desk where I was sitting, I gave him this picture that I had drawn of him, and he was kind of shocked. Didn't expect that at all, and I think he was very flattered, and it worked. My plan worked because he finally noticed me, and we made a date to play pool the very next afternoon, and from there on out, that was it. And he told me that the woman that he used to play pool with, he was kind of babysitting her for a friend of his, and she was the girlfriend of a friend of his. So it all worked out for me, and I never had done anything like that in my life, trying to get a man to notice me, but it worked. So
okay,
that's how we met.
Okay, so he was a student at the same university, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you met him, you didn't suspect that he is a Saudi?
Well, actually, when the people would rent the pool supplies, the balls and the cue sticks from me at the desk, they would have to turn in their student ID. So I did know what his name was, and I think it also said what country they're from too. So I did know his name and what country he was from. There were a lot of Middle Eastern students at the University of Arizona at that time, and many of them would come and play pool. So, you know, being from Saudi Arabia, it didn't really mean anything to me because I didn't know that much about Saudi Arabia at the time. I found out a lot about it since then, but it really had nothing to do with my attraction to him or wanting to get to know him.
So basically what I understand, sorry if I use maybe not quite appropriate words, but this is how Americans usually say. So since you are an American, so I think it might be appropriate. So you became like hooked on him.
Hooked?
Yes.
Well, I would say that I was attracted to him physically. He had a huge dark afro, which was really in at the time, and he had a beard, and I just was always attracted to that physical type. So there was a lot of physical attraction for me.
Okay, okay, and his was a at that time already a senior student or still like a junior, sophomore, or kind of about graduation?
Yeah, he actually was working on his master's, and then he went on to get his PhD at the same school. He already had his bachelor's from Saudi Arabia when he transferred or continued his studies at the University of Arizona.
Okay, okay. And what is his major?
He majored in linguistics. He was a professor of English as a second language at the college level, at the university level.
Okay, and when you kind of met each other, how long has he been dating you before made an offer?
Before he made an offer? It's a very complicated, and actually he was very honest with me from the beginning. He was there to get his education, and then he would return home and marry a nice Saudi girl, and that would be it. It actually was on a scholarship from the Saudi government, which many of the Saudi students are, and one of the terms of their conditions of going to school and getting their education provided by the government is that they will not marry or, get involved with, or, marry someone from their host country. So they have to sign a contract saying that they wouldn't do that. And he was very upfront with me about it, which I appreciated. He ended up extending the period of time that he got his master's and then his PhD. I think it took him 12 years in Arizona, which was kind of a long time. And I like to think that he did that because he wanted to spend more time with me, even though I really looked at our relationship like it was not going to go anywhere permanent. So it was difficult for me because I really loved him, and I wanted to feel like, he couldn't leave me because he loved me too much. And but at the same time, I never really had seen a future for us because of what he had told me about, going back to his country. So when he did finally get his PhD, he actually went back to Saudi Arabia, and he was unable to get a job in his field. At the time, they wanted to only hire native speakers of English to teach English. So he had a very difficult time finding a job in his field here. And after 1 year, he came back to the United States and was able to find a job in the U.S. So that, I think, was a big factor in our finally getting together in the end and having our happy ending.
So actually but once more, so it took how many years? How long did it take to kind of finalize? So you were dating before getting married for how long? 3-4 years?
Well, okay. He considered that we were married for all those years. During the time when he was getting his master's and his PhD, which took 12 years, we were together all those years. And he considered me his wife. He introduced me as his wife. Because I didn't have that legal document, marriage certificate saying that we were married, I didn't necessarily feel that same way, but he did. So we actually dated or had a 12-year-long courtship. 12 long years, yes. So, and that we finally got married in front of my friends and family in 1990, and we were together since 1977. So,
okay.
that was,
So officially you married in like 12 years after you first met him, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and my question is, it's not a secret that Saudi Arabia is a very special country in terms of traditions. It's very patriarchal country and very tribal country. And as you mentioned, by the way, that your husband, he was assigned with some girl, and I know a little bit about this procedure, how actually young people usually meet each other in this country. So it's seldom happens kind of via direct contact, but rather through relatives, mothers usually, and so on and so forth. And therefore my question is, how did your family feel about this, and how did his family feel about this?